Welcome everybody to the Murray City Planning Commission meeting, November 17th. We have commissioners, sorry, I usually am not the chair, so I just want to say that. The chair is Jeremy Lowry. He's not here. I'm vice chair, and so I get to pretend that I'm the chair tonight or act as the chair, and so please be patient with me. We have Commissioners Ney, we have Commissioners Milkevich, Commissioner Hacker, I'm Jake Pearson, we have Commissioner Patterson and Commissioner Richards. This meeting is being recorded. If you're viewing it remotely, you can submit comments to planningcommission@murray.utah.gov. And we will have a public comment section. And when we do have that, we will ask you to come to the podium up here. The podium has a microphone, but sometimes it doesn't sound like it's projecting, but it is recording you, and those that are viewing remotely will be able to hear you. So we'd ask you that you state your name and address when you come up and limit your comments to 2 minutes or 3 minutes. We will not respond directly to your public comments immediately while you're up here, but we may respond to them after the public comment section. Did I miss anything?
Cell phones.
Oh yeah, if you have your cell phone, if you could just silence that, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, we're just going to follow the agenda you have on your seats. So the first one is the approval of minutes. So we all got minutes from the October 20th meeting. Did anybody have any changes or comments they wanted to add? If not, we can entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that the commission approve the meeting minutes from October 20th, 2022 as written.
I'll second that motion.
Perfect. We have a, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Okay, second is conflict of interest. We have a conflict of interest for Gold Star Auto Sales, or sorry. Does anybody have a conflict of interest for tonight's meeting?
No.
No.
Number 3, approval of findings of facts. We have those for Gold Star Auto Sales and Triangle Auto Sales. Did anybody have any issues with those or any comments? If not, we can entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the findings of facts for the conditional use permits for Gold Star Auto Sales and Triangle Auto Sales.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now we're going to move to number 4, which is Alterations. They're applying for a major home occupation for general contractor business, and Zach is going to present this.
Thank you, Commissioners, and good evening. Like you said, this is a request for a major home occupation from Alterations LLC, located at 388 East, 4800 South. It's located just along 48th, which is about here. It is in the RM10 zone, which is our multifamily, a multifamily zone, but single-family homes are allowed in there. Home-based businesses are allowed in all residential zones, so that is allowed. So here, a couple things we're just going to review is the major home occupation information and parking, as those are a little bit more complex in a major home occupation. I will state that typically major home occupations are handled administratively. They come into our office and apply for a major home occupation, and we request that they collect signatures for the neighboring properties around them, and if they're able to do so, we go ahead and process their business license application. If they are unable to obtain those signatures, they do have the option of coming before you, the Planning Commission, and getting approval through the Planning Commission for the major home occupation. So he was unable to obtain one of the signatures, so he is here to request that. So parking, the major home occupation code does allow for one work vehicle and one trailer to be allowed on the site as long as they are parked in the rear of the property. And as you can see on the site plan here, they plan to have their work truck and the trailer located here on their cement pad. There's a picture here showing the existing cement pad. They are allowed to have an RV trailer as them being their home, and vehicles to support the home as well, personal vehicles. So we only allow the one truck and the one trailer that are associated with the business. Couple home occupation information that's relevant to this application. He will not be having any employees come. He does not have any employees, so none will be coming to the home to operate the business. Hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. That is listed in the conditions to operate only during those hours. No clients or subcontractors are going to be coming to the home. He works entirely off-site, except for office, the office uses and stuff like that. And then again, just reiterating the parking, one work truck and one 6x10 work trailer stored at the rear of the home. So with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve the request for a major home occupation to allow the general contractor business at the property 388 East, 4800 South, subject to the 7 conditions on your screen and that were outlined in the staff reports.
Thank you.
Questions?
Mr. Smallwood, can I ask
Yes.
a question just for clarification? So earlier in the presentation, you said that this business only has one employee and won't have subcontractors, contractors coming to the house. And then here we have the conditions that there can only be one employee. I just wanted to clarify that because that's part of the conditions. He can't grow the business and have 4 employees working out of the house, right? It
Correct.
would only be him.
Right. And yeah, so as part of the business license process as well, they have to renew every year and they have to provide updates if they have any new employees or anything like that. And we verify that at that time too. So if for some reason he were to come forward and say, yeah, now I have an employee, we can point to this and say, you're not allowed. So,
Or the other employee can't work here.
correct.
To be a distance or something. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
But other major home occupations can allow for employees, correct?
Can allow for, I believe, up to 1 employee coming to the home.
So is there a reason why we're limiting this as a major home occupation versus just a home occupation?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think he just mentioned that he was not going to have any employees or no intention, and so Susan took that and wrote that into the conditions.
So that's interesting. So if does this major home occupation travel with the house? So if someone else were to buy the house,
No.
okay, they would have to come to you and apply again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm correct in that, Jared, right? They do not run with the property. Yeah.
Perfect. Any other questions for Zach?
I have one more question. Sorry. So because the ordinance would allow for another employee, but in these conditions, we're saying 1 employee, no more. Is there a potential for him to come, him to come back and request a change?
Potentially, at some point, they could come back and ask for that to change if they want. I would probably speak to the applicant about their intention there.
Yeah, but just for legality of it, at that point, if they did come back and ask for a change, it would be capped at 1 additional employee. So it'd be 2
Correct.
people in
Yeah,
house.
the ordinance states only 1.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks, Zach.
Thank you.
Is the applicant present? Could you please come up to the podium, state your name and address for us?
I'm Matthew Alder. I live at 388 East, 4800 South.
Thanks, Matthew. Have you read through these conditions?
Yes, I have.
And will you be able to comply with them?
Absolutely.
Okay. do you have anything you want to add to what was presented?
Not really, I just work solo.
Okay,
It's efficient for me.
great. Does any of the commissioners have any questions for Matthew? Perfect, thank you. Appreciate it. Any discussion? A motion, maybe?
Well, I think we have to have some.
Oh, yes, sorry. See, that's why I don't do this. Sorry. We will now open the public comment. So if anybody came to comment on this, they could come up to the podium, state their name and address.
Do we need to make any, there was a few comments that were made already in the record, correct?
I'll read those in.
Okay.
Okay, I'm Steve Clayton, representing Dondi Reichman, who is a neighbor at 398 East and 415 East, 48 South. I believe the commission has a letter prepared and that will be read into the record. I just wanted to assure that would be read into the record. I think the only thing that I would highlight is the purpose of this ordinance to restrict and separate alternative uses. I think when somebody purchases a piece of property in a residential area, they are not anticipating commercial use adjoining. I think in particular with the size of this lot and the concrete pad in the back and the number of vehicles, 5 that are projected to be there's a strong potential for a lot of on-street parking, which is also prohibited, and there is limited parking in front of this property. I would also like the commission to consider, if you were a neighboring property and purchased adjoining property under this premise, what would your anticipation be? And will the petitioner or applicant indeed be able to refrain from performing work at home, storing materials at home, and rental equipment at home? I think is highlighted in the letter that to be read in. The uses associated with such projects and work, as even novice do-it-yourselfers are aware, can often involve work at home that would be interruptive and intrusive to the neighbors in this environment. So I'll go ahead and leave with that and allow the letter to be read of record unless you have any questions for me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So if there aren't other comments, then I'll go ahead and read the letter in that Mr. Clayton was referencing. That's all right. This is addressed to Murray City Planning Commission regarding the Major Home Occupation Permit Alterations LLC. Dear Murray City Planning Commission, we have been retained by Ms. Dondi Reichman, who formerly owned the property in question and sold it to the applicant, to oppose the application of Alterations LLC, Alterations, 388 East, 4800 South, Murray City, the property, for a Major Home Occupation Permit. Reichman inherited 3 properties on 4800 South. The aforementioned property, the second property next door to the properties east, 398 East, 4800 South, and the third across the street and 1 door down to the east of the property, 415 East, 4800 South. Reichman represents to the commission that had she known the Alterations intended to use the property for a commercial general contracting business, that she would not have sold it to Alterations because of the detrimental effect such a business would have on the neighborhood, including the 2 neighboring properties which she owns. The 398 East property has a tax value the 398 East property has a tax value of $682,500, and the 415 East property has a tax value of $514,300. The property has a tax value of $347,200. Therefore, Ms. Reichman represents not 1 but 2 neighboring properties that oppose the issuance of this permit. Images of the property from the street are attached as Exhibit A, and those will be part of the record as well. Chapter 17. Sorry, I'm skipping a whole paragraph. Just one moment. The purpose of a permit is to allow a limited commercial use by a resident owner so long as such use is compatible with and not detrimental to the residential character of the neighborhood, and so long as it does not change the appearance or condition of that residence. Murray City Code 172410. The nature of activities associated with alterations proposed general contractor use, undoubtedly utilizing heavy equipment and tools mobilized by large trucks and trailers in coordination with multiple subcontractors and potential employees, is not compatible with and is assuredly a detriment to the residential character of this neighborhood. Alterations' intended use is further underscored by its diagram on the application for a major home occupation permit, which shows alterations' intention to convert the rear of the residence into a cemented parking lot and staging area. It appears that alterations has modified the condition of the property to include in the backyard an expanded concrete driveway and outdoor parking lot that leaves little green space in the backyard. See Exhibit B. Chapter 17.24 of the Murray City Code sets forth the requirements that must be met in order to qualify for a permit. First, it should be noted that contractors are one of the few professions specifically designated in the code as a major home occupation requiring permits, likely because of their intensive use, including early hours of operation, use of heavy equipment, storage and use of expensive tools, and conduct by which by its nature is noisy, hammers and saws, etc. Dirty, dust, dirt, cement, odorous, paint and fumes, and potentially environmentally hazardous, paints, varnishes, and metals. Indeed, the major home occupation requirements were established to prevent such neighborhood disruptions, including noise or vibrations, noxious odors, fumes, flare, dust, and heat. And that's in Section 17.24.040, subsection P. In addition to the requirements applicable to all major home occupations, contractors and handypersons may not store any construction materials or equipment on the property. This strict requirement is prohibitive of alterations' proposed application, as it prevents them from maintaining on-site any materials or equipment, a requirement that alterations is unlikely to be able to meet, considering alterations' day-to-day need for materials and equipment suited to the ever-changing projects that they service. Second, a qualifying major home occupation must be conducted entirely within the main dwelling, without utilizing the yard or accessory buildings for the storage of supplies or inventory. Even the novice do-it-yourself owner would find it hard to imagine servicing a commercial and residential remodeling business strictly within the confines of one's home, without utilizing the backyard or detached garage, particularly when stripping and varnishing a door, measuring and cutting floorboards, or when utilizing any kind of sander or saw. Alterations itself indicated in their application that they would like to store tools in the detached garage, in contravention of city code. Certainly the noise, odors, potentially toxic debris associated with construction activities speaks to the purpose of retaining as separate residential and commercial uses. Third, the number of vehicles associated with the proposed major home occupation is limited to one vehicle under 12,000 pounds and one trailer less than 20 feet. Alterations in its application has identified 2 trucks, 2 trailers, and 1 personal vehicle, all to be parked in addition to any rental equipment that alterations may use from time to time in the property's backyard. This application process is meant to prohibit such a use. In addition to the detrimental effects the alterations proposed use poses to the neighborhood, it ought to be highlighted that 4800 South in Murray City is a historical area where many of the city's historical homes are located. As of today, such homes have been well maintained, restored, and retain their historical charm. Allowing construction companies to operate out of or around such homes will certainly decrease the values of surrounding historical properties and inhibit investment in retaining such historical landmarks. Further, it is clear that this is a residential neighborhood and that by granting this permit, it would set a precedent to allow other uses incompatible with the master plan of Murray City. To allow a construction yard in the city's core is not in the best interest of the neighboring residences or Murray City. For all these reasons, we urge you to deny alterations permit.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Zach, did we get any emails? Okay. Seeing no more comments, we will close the public comment section. Zach, do you want to address any of those things like storage, parking?
Noise.
Yeah, I kind of addressed it in the presentation, but I'll go over a couple of it real quickly. If you see here on the application or on the site plan that was submitted and is in the applicant or in the packet, the RV trailer is personal, the personal truck, and personal vehicles. And we do have it in the conditions that is listed only as one vehicle associated with the business and one trailer associated with the business. And as you guys have checked with the applicant, he can comply with those conditions.
And no street parking.
No street parking related to the business. I will say that it is not.
Personal vehicles
Yeah,
can park
personal
on the
vehicles
street.
can park on the street. It's public
Anywhere
land.
in the city or-
Yeah, anywhere in the city. Let's see. I mean, and that seems like the major points. Was there something I missed?
Well, just I feel like that comment was assuming that a lot of the work would be happening at this property, and that is not what this major home occupation is
No,
approving.
no, it's not approving
So
that
they
at
wouldn't
all.
be able to rent big equipment and then keep it at their house,
Correct.
or be staining something or doing work in their backyard. Like,
Right.
That's not what this major home occupation is approving.
Exactly, and I'll just speak from my limited experience. I just went through a kitchen remodel myself, and it is very clear that contractors do not store things
They
at their
store it
home.
at the project,
They
right?
store it at my home. I don't see that as an issue. And staining was done at my home, not
So-
fumes.
I am a neighbor, and
Yeah.
so I'm thinking this through as well. I think the intent is not to have work done on the property, not to have noise and stuff. How about signage
We don't allow for signage
with a major home?
for major home occupations. It's subject to the same residential sign code.
So the intent is to allow people to have their personal business to work from their home and provide the service somewhere else.
Correct.
Any other questions for Zach?
Just a comment.
Sure.
Looking at the picture there, can you go
Oop.
back to the picture?
Site plan?
Yeah, so,
Okay.
I mean, a lot of homes have an RV and a trailer. The only thing that's really different just in terms of the number of vehicles is the work truck. So it doesn't seem excessive in terms of like the amount of vehicles. Just a comment.
And we don't, I will say, we don't, as the city, don't regulate how many vehicles somebody can have
Yeah.
if they have the storage for it. That, yeah. Outside of work vehicles.
So one more thought is it's hard to regulate these things because there could be 6 cars there if we have family over. Or it could be a customer, who knows, right? It's hard to regulate. But that's why we classify what, or list or categorize what would fit as a major home occupation. Because if it was an occupation like a dance school or something where you expect customers to come, then it wouldn't qualify, right? So
Right.
that's our attempt to prevent those things from happening.
Precisely.
Parking issues or noise issues. Or
Yep.
We have noise ordinances in the city
Correct.
that we can enforce
Yes.
if that occurs.
Perfect. Any others? Thanks, Zach.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. Motion that we approve the request for a major home occupation to allow general contractor business at the residential property addressed at 388 East, 4800 South, subject to conditions 1 through 7.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Ney. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Commissioner Patterson. Zach, can you do a roll call?
Maybe I just shouldn't sit down. I think maybe I'll just stand for the rest of the time. Okay. Commissioner Ney.
Yes.
Commissioner Patterson.
Yes.
Commissioner Richards.
Yes.
Commissioner Milkevich.
I want to say please be a good neighbor and stick to the requirements and the intent. Yes.
Commissioner Hacker, did I
Yes.
ask you? Okay. And Chair Peterson. Pearson.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Congratulations and welcome to Murray. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda number 5, Moffett Farm Subdivision. And Zach will also be
Yes.
telling us about this.
Okay. So this is a request by a Ms. Claudia Luttrell. She owns multiple properties, as you can see here, 6190, 6270, 6288, 6294, 6304, and 6334 South Moffett Farm Lane. It's located here. Just this right here is a Wheeler Farm on the west side. The property is accessed via Vine Street. Yes, Vine, right? Is it Vine there? Yeah, Vine Street up on the north. I'm sorry, it cut off there in the photo. She owns a number of these properties, and she would like to do some cleanup of the property. And we as staff felt that the easiest way to do this is to go through the subdivision process. As you can see, this was annexed into Murray in 2003, I believe, roughly. And this was originally subdivided under Salt Lake County at the time. So you can see property lines go through the middle of houses, cuts through some houses. There's 2 houses on one property. It's kind of a big mess. So she does want to clean that up and make that a little bit more streamlined. So it is in the A1 zone, which is our agricultural zone, which requires a minimum of 1 acre lots. As you can see, some of these are not, this total area is 13.2 acres, but these 2 little pieces of property here are not 1 acre, so they don't comply. So another reason for this is to bring this into compliance with Murray City standards. So this is the proposed plat, and the couple things that we'll review on this application are the zoning standards and the access to this property. The picture in front of you is the proposed lots, so the proposed preliminary plat, showing that we're breaking up some of these properties to show that they each meet that 1 acre minimum. And yeah. So here is where things are existing. So you can see these gray lines here. I think you can, yeah, you can see them. You can see them better on the TV than I can on my iPad. You can see these property lines here. Like I mentioned, things go through buildings, cut through buildings. So this is an opportunity for her to clean up stuff that is in her trust. Let's see. So zoning standards. Staff did review all of this, and every lot does comply. So there's a lot area minimum of 1 acre, lot width minimum of 100 feet. Each one of these meet that. Front yard setback of 30 feet, rear yard 25, interior side 10. There are no corners, so but it would be 20 and a maximum height of 35 feet. And also I will caveat this, so this is not creating new lots. This is purely just cleanup of existing lots, moving a lot of lines. I believe there are 8 properties right now, and it's actually going down to 7. So we're actually eliminating a lot there in those line cleanups. So the access here, this is the, typically Murray City does not typically, we do not allow subdivision on private streets. However, there is a section in our subdivision ordinance that allows for the Planning Commission to allow for exceptions in the case that there is no other way for the property to be subdivided and would not be detrimental to the community. We do not invoke this ever. It's the first time I think Jared's even done it in his almost 10 years here. It's the first time I've done it. We are requesting that you do allow for this subdivision to go through, because this is not creating additional lots. This is just lot cleanup, and allows for her to maintain her properties and also clean those up at the same time. There's no way to get an access into this property. This is all owned by a condo association. These are single family homes along here and almost entirely surrounding her property. And also, as I mentioned in the aerial here, Wheeler Farm, I don't think they're going to allow a street to go through their nice farm.
Can I ask you though, what
Sure.
about this, like 6200 South, and there looks like there's an empty lot right there. Could that ever be purchased?
This?
Yeah.
This is owned by Murray City.
Oh, okay.
So no, it's a detention basin.
Okay.
It actually collects a lot of the runoff water that comes here. Murray City does not part with detention basins.
Okay.
So no.
There's also probably 12 to 15 feet of grade difference from the street
Yep.
down to the base of that
Yep.
detention basin.
Exactly.
Eh.
So yeah.
And for further clarification, detention basins are, I believe, intentionally designed in specific places for runoff in the community. So it's not like you can just get tired of the land or want money and this change the purpose. It already has a purpose.
It does have a purpose, yes, and you would have to find another place for detention, because if you remove it, that water does have to still go somewhere at some point, and that's just not feasible because this is all privately owned, except for this piece that Murray City owns to manage that water runoff. So, yep, that is the request there. So, with that, we are recommending that the Planning Commission grant preliminary and final subdivision approval for the Moffett Farm subdivision at the properties listed in the staff report. I will say that my staff report did not have the right condition number 1, so I modified it in this. So when you're making a motion, if you could state that the conditions are based on these that are listed in the PowerPoint.
Can you go back to the plat for just a moment?
Of course.
So with this change, lot 2 and 6 become buildable lots.
They become open lots. So part of the reason we don't anticipate these would become buildable lots is because Murray City requires that any new development be on the sewer line. All these properties thus far have been on septic. We don't allow for septic to be installed anymore at this point. So these, I don't believe, are buildable lots.
So let's say 50 years down the road, and all these properties have transferred, and someone's able to collect these properties and come in for a rezone. Is there anything to prevent them from putting a full subdivision back in here of R18 or R110 lots, knowing that they would have to, tie into sewer?
Only if they were able to obtain some sort of public right-of-way. The condition for that private access is based solely on this.
Moffett Farm Lane does not
Moffett-
meet that requirement. at
Right,
this point in
exactly.
time.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't have the exact measurement there, but it is not wide enough to have a public road on it, and no other way to get a public road to that properties. Questions?
Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks, Zach.
Thank you.
Is the applicant present? Could you please come up to the podium, state your name and address?
Claudia Luttrell, 6288 South Moffett Farm Lane.
Thank you. Have you read these conditions 1 through 4?
Yes.
And can you comply with them?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Do you have anything you want to add to what Zach presented, or?
Nope. The only thing is the property prehistorically sits on Lake Bonneville Island. And so if you look at the property to the east of me and to the west of me, they both drop off. So one of the properties, the big one, as you get down towards where the river runs, in order to put a multiple home subdivision in there, you'd have to bring in so much landfill that I don't think anybody would ever do that. And as long as I'm alive, it's not going to be developed.
Okay,
It's a
thank you.
beautiful piece of property, and
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. I guess we will move to the public comment. We'll open the public comment portion, so if you have any comments, please come up to the podium, state your name and address.
Get one by email.
Thank you.
This came in just before the meeting by an hour, so I'll read that in. If my phone will write itself. There we go. This is an email from John and Chris. I'm going to say it wrong. Wayman. I'm going to say Wayman. Dear Planning Commission, is the request by Claudia Luttrell just property line changes, or are there any zoning changes being requested? If there is a zoning change, more information needs to be provided to the neighbors before a final decision. If this is just property line changes that comply with existing zoning, then we have no issues with this request. Sincerely, John and Chris Wayman.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, then we'll close the public comment section. And just to address that email, there is no zone changes. So, okay, any discussion, questions, motions?
I mean, oh, what? Oh,
I think I did. It's closed if I didn't. The public comment section is closed.
I think I understand why it's coming for a subdivision review and preliminary and final review. But like Commissioner Ney said, I think my concern is that, yes, right now it's not going to be developed, and right now someone is not interested in putting a house on lot 2 or lot 6, but technically they are created. They are buildable lots if somebody could figure out how to meet all of the requirements. So I just have concerns about that. I don't like that. Yes, the property owner right now is not going to do anything to develop that, but
But couldn't they develop it right now?
as lot 2 and lot 6, no, they couldn't build on us. They couldn't subdivide.
But it's already
On a private
subdivided,
line.
right?
No, that's what we're doing right now. We are subdividing to create lot 2 and lot 6.
Can you speak to that, Zach? Because there's already lots without buildings on them.
But we're creating 2 lots. The lots as they stand right now, you couldn't. There
Nine
are
lots.
random lines everywhere, but we are creating 2 lots.
But couldn't they put a house right there?
No.
Could
So-
they not, Zach? Can you explain
So, technically, you kind of both are technically right. So, for example, this lot here does not meet the overall thing, but our code stipulates we can't disallow somebody just based on lot area, square footage. So this lot technically could have a house built on it right now. Right now, I believe it's just, I'm sorry. It's a barn, yes. So it doesn't have a main structure on it. So that could potentially have a house be built on it. This one, again, the case could be made that it doesn't have a house on it. There's that potential as well. And then you also have this little piece here. I don't think you'd make any setbacks available there unless you put something tiny on there. But again, you could build something on that lot as well.
So, just for the discussion purpose, I think we're always concerned when we're creating something that's not intentional, such as subdividing an area so that a high rise comes in, or high density, which always concerns everyone, right? But I think this zone is A1.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who knows what the future holds? We can't predict everything and prevent everything. But right now, it's remaining A1 agriculture. So if someone were to build on it, it would have to have an acre of land around it. So it couldn't be a high rise or high density. It would need to be something smaller as it's zoned right now.
It would have to be a single family residence,
Right.
yes.
So it's not a negative
But all of
necessarily.
these lots that are being created are 1 acre.
So you're saying someone could buy 1 acre and then do more on it?
I mean, I just feel uncomfortable that as it stands right now, like the property owner isn't doing anything. But if we make these changes, I know they can't subdivide on a private lane, but they could technically try and figure out, like a developer. I just feel like we're in a situation where we are getting so crunched for land that there could be a point in the future where they're like, there's 2 available lots back there. Let's figure out how to make it.
So Marin's concerned then, are we setting a precedent so this has been subdivided when we said it couldn't, so someone can come back and subdivide it again? Because we've already said
No.
it can be.
No, there's no possible way. We would not allow it to be subdivided additionally because there is not. What am I trying to say? I just lost my train of thought. Went off the cliff.
Water and sewer.
There's the water and sewer access, that's for sure. And then also the private lane does have would be owned by these property owners, and they would have to grant access to those for those
Yeah, I mean, I understand that it's complicated. I'm just saying developers are getting more willing to do more complicated things the less places that there are to build. So I understand why we're doing this.
And
We're inheriting a problem
Right.
that we're trying to fix, but I also feel like by fixing it, we're also going against a policy that we do not do in the city. We don't
Right.
subdivide on private lanes.
right.
And by us doing this, we are, I feel like, kind of leaning into the fact that it's like, well, there would be 2 additional lots here. Like, so I just feel uncomfortable about that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, so I think to kind of expand on what you're saying, so the properties to the west of this are large parcels of property, and I think the ability to find some sort of connectivity to this is there. A lot of pieces have to fall in line. It's unlikely someone's going to be
Right.
able to assemble them all.
I totally
but to
agree.
think that something coming off of 900 East into this piece of property, it's not completely out of question. I think it would take a lot to do, but there's a couple of very large vacant parcels over there currently that might even be for sale. And so that's my only trepidation with this. I mean,
There's just no protections in the future, I feel like, if things change.
And there are some. It is in the A1 zone. They would have to request.
But these are both, I mean, you could build, these are both 1 acre lots.
That's true.
So they could just come in and build. If they could
A
meet
sing-
all of these other requirements,
Right.
they would have to do nothing to these lots to be able
Right.
to build.
And that is correct.
Yeah.
But it would be 2 homes.
But what Zach was saying,
Yeah.
the prior existing lot rule is that that's the case today.
That is correct. That is the case
Right,
today.
yeah. It's just
in these-
funkier how it works. This is just creating 2, like, that looks like a perfect little lot.
Yeah, and I understand that. I mean, in this one,
And I'm not saying that it's not a reason to consider it. I understand that we're inheriting a problem that we're trying to rectify. I just am stating that I feel uncomfortable with how it's created.
So you're, sorry, go ahead.
I always appreciate these discussions, so the public knows we're trying to think it through. So I appreciate bringing up the concern.
definitely.
So is your concern more that we
If
usually
we-
don't subdivide with the private lane? Not that you would be necessarily be against 2 houses going in this property, but
it's
we're
that
just going against
what
what
are-
we usually do.
Yes,
I
and
see.
so now we are doing something that we say that we don't do. We are creating 2 lots.
we're allowed to do, but we
we're
don't
allowed
do.
to do, right? We are creating 2 lots. Because even if these, I get why every lot is 1 acre, but this one's 2. If that was included and it was 3 and someone would have to come back and then subdivide that to make that a buildable lot, I would feel much more comfortable with that.
And let me clarify this as well. This is also just one process that we've done. This is the cleanest process. So for some reason, let's say that you decide to not approve the subdivision, right? She could come back because these are not in a platted subdivision currently. She could come to us and do a staff level administrative change to just move the property lines and create this exact same thing. It just would not be in a plat.
So
And-
she could apply, not come before the commission at all. The staff could approve that. And
As a boundary line
as a
adjustment.
boundary line, just wouldn't be on a plat map.
Correct.
I feel a lot more comfortable with that, honestly.
What's the pros or cons of her coming to us? I mean, I appreciate that she came to us so we can have a public discussion, but beyond that,
It's cleaner. Almost there are no such things as non-platted lots anymore unless they were made prior to that. So we're trying to bring this up to what is normally accepted.
so can you clarify? So you said cleaner, and earlier you said cleaner, and I was wanting a little clarification on cleaner because I came
Sure.
to the earlier when I came to the meeting thinking, why would we make an exception? Then I started learning more about it, and I realized, I think, that there's no pros and cons for the city with this, as far as we can tell, no negatives for the city. It would just allow for a property owner to pass away and give equal pieces of property to other relatives versus give my daughter half a house and my son the other half.
Sure.
As the line goes through it. Is that the cleaning up, or is that not
That's the cleaning up. The cleaner version. What I mean by a cleaner version are legal descriptions are long and very hairy, and the way that you would have to go about it on these properties, because we would be moving. I don't even remember how we did this. we would be moving a portion of this line to cut across this line and then moving this line over here, and it becomes a
But
novel.
that's exactly my point. If that's what we're doing, somebody's inheriting an empty lot, right? But
And-
if there were 5 lots instead of 7 lots that could not then be subdivided, I feel like that's a much better solution for this private lane that we do not subdivide on.
Sure.
Maybe. Why is it 7 and not 5?
I don't know.
That was the
This is what was
request,
brought to us.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will say, I think it is going from 8 lots down to 7 as well. 9 lots down to 7.
Right. But I would feel much more comfortable if it was going from 9 lots to 5 lots. And that those 1 acres were included with adjoining properties so that they could not be subdivided in the future. So that's.
If you'd like the
Applicant to
to
speak.
applicant to
Yeah,
speak
I'm
to
okay with that
explain.
if the applicant wants to come back up.
Okay. If you
Comment.
would like to, you're more than welcome to.
That way we can all hear you.
It was actually Murray that said we had to do that, because originally I was going to just split that down the middle and have, so that'd make it 3, 4, 6 lots. But, you know, they said that that middle part had to be a 1 acre lot.
Own lot. Because of the zoning, Zach? Because it's A1?
Most likely. That's the other part of it as well, is that during any of these boundary line adjustments, any boundary line adjustment has to end in a 1 acre lot. So if she's touching, for example, this lot here, then you would have to. I'm sorry, I don't usually design on the fly, but you would have to move things around in this area to make this a lot, and it's messy. Like I said in the pre-meeting, we've been working on this for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And this was what staff felt the easiest and best option.
What can you explain again there was a barrier that was discussed earlier with the sewer and the septic, and so it might help me be less leery about 7 lots versus 5. Either way, there's still barriers to building here, correct?
Yeah, we would not allow for a building, any dwelling to be built that is on septic. It has to be tied in to the sewer system.
And currently, there's no way to tie in unless the property to the east was purchased and the property changed. Or
Yeah,
something.
you would have to go through a lot of hoops to do that. You would have to install an entire sewer line through most likely
Multiple properties.
multiple properties and through
Distances.
here. Yeah,
The
through
neighbors too.
you have through this area and then down this way as well. And I'm not even sure where a tie-in is for the sewer. So, and that would be the same for this lot too as well.
But it's all brand new on Vine Street.
There you go.
Just saying.
So there you go. It's brand new. But yeah, you would have to. There's additional things that have to go through this. Who owns that private road? It's going to be shared between these properties, so they would have to. All of them would have to approve that as well.
It's fairly encumbered. I think that's a fair.
It is very encumbered.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant or for Zach? Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Any more conversation? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that the Planning Commission grant preliminary and final subdivision approval for the Moffett Farm subdivision on the properties addressed 6190, 6270, 6288, 6294, 6304, and 6334 South Moffett Farm Lane, subject to the following conditions listed on this slide.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Richards. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Commissioner Hacker. Zach?
All right. Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Commissioner Hacker,
Yes.
sorry, Commissioner Milkovich,
Yes.
Commissioner Ney,
Yes.
Commissioner Patterson,
Yes.
and Chair Pearson.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Congratulations. Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 6, Trip Lane subdivision, and Zach is also going to present this.
Yes. What I think most of the people are here for tonight, because I don't think they're here to talk about ADUs. So, this is a request from NeighborWorks of Salt Lake to subdivide the property into 12 lots on 871 West Trip Lane. It's approximately 2.78 acres, and they are requesting to subdivide that with a cul-de-sac. To give a little bit of history and background, in 2020, we reviewed a subdivision that had a road connecting to, I can't even remember the name of the street, but this one here on the south. Willow Grove, thank you. Willow Grove Lane, connecting up to Trip Lane here. And the Planning Commission did approve that preliminary subdivision and stated that the applicant should go forward and pursue whether the City Council would entertain eminent domain or attempt to purchase the property from the property owners to the south, where there's this tiny little piece right there that is blocking the improvements of Willow Grove Lane. The City Council ultimately did not take action on that. They denied taking action on using eminent domain. So the applicants have gone back. They first came back with a rezone to R16, which was approved by the City Council, as you can see here, on the property. And they then moved forward with developing a cul-de-sac subdivision off of Trip Lane. So here is the proposed plat. As you can see, it is 12 lots around a cul-de-sac with a parcel A, which is located here. This parcel A will be used for detention, kind of like what we talked about before, that where stormwater runoff goes, it sits there, it percolates before it does eventually go into the storm drain system through Murray City. So, a few things we're going to go over are the zoning standards, fencing, access, and grading and drainage of the property. So first are the zoning standards. So lot areas in this are a minimum of 6,000 square feet, with lot widths at a minimum of 35 feet along a public street. All the lots meet those first two. The third one, lot frontage, is a minimum of 60 feet at the 20-foot setback. I'll go into that here in a second. Front yard is 20 feet. Front yard setback is 20 feet. Rear yard is 25. Interior is 5 foot. Corner side is 20 foot. And the height of a residential structure here is limited to 30 feet. So as you can see, there's a big red X on lot 7. That does not meet the lot frontage requirement of 60 feet at the 20-foot setback line. Staff measured it at approximately 51 feet. After talking to engineering division staff, we were confident that they could fix that in the interim between preliminary approval and final approval. And it is conditioned in the report as well. Access. So you get to see some of the, I don't know what the term is anymore, but you get to see how I make a mess of plans everywhere. So required is 49 feet. And as I measured in a few different ways, it came out to about 47 feet wide. So that does need to be amended before it gets final subdivision approval. I think I know what happened here, and it just needs to be indicated on the plans. I did find a right-of-way where the right-of-way actually goes into the property by a foot, which some municipalities, that's where your property line starts, is a foot after your sidewalk. But here in Murray, it starts at the sidewalk. So I'm sure that's just something that just needs to be tweaked on their end. And then also the applicant is working with the Murray City Power Department to work on, to get this as part of the right-of-way for the city. As you can see in this photo, this is actually owned by Murray City Power. I believe there's a substation or something located in that area, and so they are asking so that they can get that full width of 49 feet. They are working with the power department on how to make that happen, and that would be done obviously prior to recordation of the plat. Okay, so moving on to grading and drainage. This is parcel A. Like I mentioned, it's a detention basin. So you can see the storm drain from Trip Lane will come in and drain here, as well as from Willow Grove Lane to the south. You can see where this is that little piece of property that is not owned by Murray City, but this border here is included in the public right-of-way, so that butts up to the parcel A. So I believe in the engineering comments, there was something that mentioned about bollards. Those bollards would need to be placed somewhere on this line. Most likely, they're probably asking for them now that I'm looking at a plan. This was brought up in the pre-meeting. Now that I'm looking at a plan, it looks like it starts its descent right on the property line. So I would assume that putting it right there at the end of Willow Grove Lane is probably the reason why they've asked for that. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the preliminary subdivision subject to 12 conditions. These are very small to fit them on one slide. I apologize. They are in your staff report. And yes, any questions so far?
No questions?
Not a
Okay.
one? Okay.
I actually have a question. So that there's a pedestrian access from the circle to the...
Currently, yes. So there's two ways of explaining this. We are asking the applicant to provide a pedestrian connection up through the cul-de-sac area. This would eliminate the need for children to cross private property, even though they have been willing and they have let people cross their property in this little section, because that is where the fence is that connects into the school district property here. It does cross through, and I'm sorry, I don't remember if it's the Livingstons. I think it's the Livingstons that lives on this side that have crossed the Livingstons property. So we are asking that they provide a connection through, and that kind of explains a little bit more why parcel A looks the way it does. Let me get to this one here. This is an access easement that comes across and would be available to be accessed by the public.
Are the bollards so someone doesn't drive their four-wheeler through there? That's probably why,
Pretty
right?
much. Yep.
Okay. Could you, in one of the comments we got from the public, they talked about the maintenance of parcel A. Can you just
Oh, yes.
mention
Thank
that
you.
real
Thank
quick?
you for reminding me. Yeah. Currently, that's up for consideration. There are two options for that. The first would be that NeighborWorks of Salt Lake would maintain that property, but the engineering division is working with the Public Works department to determine whether the city would be able to accept that property and maintain it at that point. And that's still ongoing, and we'll have we'll have that hashed out before final subdivision approval.
But someone would be required.
Somebody would be required to maintain that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thanks.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to ask some around that question. So if, what is it, NeighborWorks or Public Works, right? So if Public Works owned it, that that's part of Murray. That will be here as long as Murray's here. If NeighborWorks owned that A parcel, NeighborWorks is a state-ran organization as well, right?
It's not state-owned, no, it's a nonprofit.
So it's a nonprofit. So, I mean, what's the likelihood that NeighborWorks will be around in 15 years? What happens when a nonprofit owns a piece of property? How does that persist after they?
That's a great question. I would anticipate that it would be Jared to speak to it because he looks like he's about to come out of his chair and wants to speak to it. So I will turn it over to him.
Just as for two things to answer that question, or to address that at least a little bit. NeighborWorks celebrated their 45th gala last night. That was and that's NeighborWorks Salt Lake, 45 years. So as an organization, they've been around a long time. It's a national organization. I don't think they're going anywhere soon. And all of that, the land that they hold and the obligations they have are all held as part of trusts. So that would all have to be worked out. And the last thing I would say about that too, even if they were dissolved, 3 years from now, that stuff is all held in trust and it goes to somewhere. Someone's going to end up with that and going to have to control it. And it's a detention basin, just like we just talked about. That water has to go there. It's obligated to go there by the subdivision. So when anyone comes to us and says we want to take this and turn it into something else, the first question is, how are you going to do that? You got to put the water somewhere. So if you want to build a $13 million subgrade detention basin under the road somewhere, I guess maybe you can do that. But I don't know that one lot's worth that. So it's going to stay a detention basin. Someone will be responsible for it. Not a worry I would have.
Thank you. Any other
Does that
questions?
help clear it up a little bit? Perfect.
Go ahead.
Well, maybe I think we're going to have public comments in a second, and we had a few public comments, and you've already answered this, but just because it's in all three public comments we've heard already, can you just state again why it's not a through street?
And I'm sorry, I'm staff for Murray City, but it is largely the city council decided not to take action on using eminent domain. And what we are here for today is to act on the application that was brought forward by NeighborWorks. They did submit an application, pay fees, and we are obligated as staff by the state to process the application.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Zach. Is the applicant present? Would you please come up to the podium, state your name and address?
Hi, my name is David Foster, and I'm the real estate manager for NeighborWorks Salt Lake. My address is 5365 South, 5240 West, Salt Lake City, Utah.
Thank you, David. Have you had a chance to review these conditions, the 12 conditions?
Yes,
And will you be able to comply with them?
yes, that is our intention, is to comply with all the list of things there. So
Perfect.
we spent a lot of time working on this, and we want to do something positive for your community. So we've come this far, and we will meet every one of those conditions that's been set out there.
Perfect. Do you have any other comments you want to make, or?
Nope, I just appreciate your time and consideration and improving us. We've been, just trying to do something good for the community and create some affordable housing, and we've taken the time to, rezone this to make some more affordable lots and stuff like that. So appreciate your time and considering this for us.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have questions for David? No? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, I think now we will go ahead and open the public comment period. Just a reminder, we did already receive some comments and we have read those. And if you could keep your comments to 3 minutes, that would help us get through all these. When you come to the podium, state your name and address. It's open for you.
My name is Elizabeth Larson, and I live at 5659 South, 800 West. I also own a building lot on Blue Barn Circle. And I want to go on record as favoring, rather than this cul-de-sac, through street from Trip Lane through to Willow Grove, or second choice, a cul-de-sac going the opposite direction, coming from Willow Grove, ending where Trip Lane is. I think that this is in the best interest of the whole community, especially when we consider the traffic and safety concerns that exist around Riverview Junior High and Viewmont Elementary. When you look at the map, it's not difficult to see that there is a street stub at Willow Grove Lane and Tripp Lane, and putting a street through makes much more sense. To connect the two stubs would allow for the disbursement of more traffic, the cohesiveness of our neighborhoods. It's already been mentioned that originally the Planning and Zoning in August 4, 2020 was all in favor of a street going through, even though I know this isn't being presented tonight. A traffic study was done on the impact of the subdivision on Bullion that they are building 74 new homes right now. And that traffic study was done, but since then we have had 48 additional new home sites either approved or being proposed that are all going to involve traffic flow in this area. We have two main traffic problems, is the school traffic and then the recreational events around 800 West and Tripp Lane specifically. I realize that this committee does not adhere to address specific traffic issues, but good planning is under your jurisdiction, which can prevent future problems. And I believe that planning should be done under proper protocol with openness and consideration to the needs and feelings of the citizens that pay taxes. We need to, if this is going to go on, be approved today, we need to know as citizens how we can get our traffic problems solved. We're trying to prevent some things here, but we don't know where to go. We're getting the runaround. Murray School District has told us they have no plans to rebuild Riverview Junior High or solve any of the traffic problems we have there for at least 3 years or more. It's possible that we could try to widen Tripp Lane. That might solve part of the problem. Tripp Lane and 800 West are 30 feet wide. Anderson Avenue, where the Viewmont is 46 feet wide. 30 feet wide is not enough room for one side of parked cars and a good flow of two-way traffic. And just to show that this is happening on Tripp Lane, recently a no left turn sign has been, there's no left turning during school traffic hours from Tripp Lane onto 800 West. So we're just really concerned, onto 700 West, sorry. We're just really concerned how to prevent some of these things that are going to get worse when the 74 new homes and the 31 new homes are all built.
Thank you.
I'm Rachel Palmer, and I live at 774 West Tripp Lane. I became a first-time homeowner when I purchased my home on Tripp Lane in March of 2021. Due to the widespread traffic decrease caused by the pandemic, I couldn't accurately assess the normal traffic situation of the house. I work as a biomedical engineer supporting the manufacturing lines for heart implants. As a young working professional, the worst part of my commute, by far, is getting out of my own neighborhood. This is because I need to leave at the same time as students are arriving at Riverview Junior High. First, I have to perfectly time leaving my driveway in between the cars that are going into, past, or out of the school drop-off zone, which is directly across the street from my home. My more normal intersection to get out of my neighborhood is 700 West and Tripp Lane, but it's too busy in the morning and nobody is supposed to turn left there during that time. So instead I have to head west onto Tripp Lane. Then I have to turn right onto 800 West, where cars coming to school often miss the stop sign. I then have to weave around the current construction on 800 West and the cars routinely parked in the street. Then I have to turn right onto Bullion Street, which has 2 crosswalks but is not a 3-way stop. The stop will only be getting busier with the new development on Bullion Street. And then I still have to make an unprotected left turn onto 700 West in between more students walking to school and the cars going in both directions. The entire time I'm passing students on the sidewalk or on the street. They're often chatting, using their phones, and being normal kids. But honestly, some of them look scared or even nervous as they dodge cars. I believe that the proposed cul-de-sac for Neighborworks should connect onto Willow Grove Lane or potentially a through street so that my future neighbors that will live there will not deal with the same commute issues that I do. While standing in my front yard, I have already been stopped by potential home buyers that are interested in the development on 800 West, but they are already concerned about the traffic situation and they wanted my honest opinion. Future owners will benefit from a better traffic flow. I mean no ill will to my current neighbors that disagree with me, nor to the neighbors that will live in this development. I am excited that more people will get to live in a great area of Murray. But I would ask you that you please do not approve this preliminary subdivision review so we can take the time to make a better solution. I do believe that our community will benefit if the cul-de-sac connects to Willow Grove Lane instead of Tripp Lane. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Brenda Hells. My address is 820 West Tripp Lane. I just want to start by citing the Murray City Code, Title 17.4.020, and it states, encourage and facilitate the orderly growth and development of the city, preserve and create a favorable environment for citizens and visitors of the city. And I would like to highlight that section for a moment. The current state of Tripp Lane, as has been mentioned, is not a favorable environment for citizens or visitors. I've had many visitors that say to me, how can you stand this? Why do they do this here? This is horrible. By connecting Tripp Lane to Willow Grove Lane, another access point for diversion of traffic would be available. This would help during school pickup and drop-off, as well as with any events being held at Viewmont, Riverview, and the adjoining softball fields. Cars have been forced to back down 8th West because there's no way to get on either side of Tripp Lane, and let alone to be able to turn around in a safe manner. And one time we saw a truck actually pull onto the sidewalk to allow cars to go down Tripp Lane. He's doing this while the pedestrians are walking, and that's including children. They're running to get to their events. This is just one example of many that I could come up with, but I would not consider this a favorable environment for citizens or visitors, as the code says. Now let's continue with the Murray Code. Promote the development of a wholesome, serviceable, and attractive city, resulting in an orderly, planned use of resources. Because of instances like the one we just talked about, Tripp Lane is currently very difficult, if not impossible, to serve during peak times of traffic by the paramedics or the fire trucks. 2 cars cannot even fit down the street. When there's cars parked on both sides, only 1 car can go down that street, and let alone a fire truck. There have been multiple occasions when a fire truck has to park at the end of a street and walk clear to the other end of the street to help the person that's needing it. On July 16th of 2020, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously with a vote of 7-0 in favor of the road connection. This is particularly due to the support from Murray City Fire Department, Water Division, Sewer Division, Power, and engineers. But the City Council took the no vote, as was mentioned, which stopped the progress of eminent domain. When NeighborWorks proposed the zone change from R8 to R6, the Planning and Zoning Commission approved it. I then talked to Zachary from the Public Works and asked if there was a possibility to readdress the street connection. He stated that because of the change of zoning, consideration of a new proposal would require new approval. So this now gives us the opportunity to readdress the need for Tripp Lane to connect with Willow Grove Lane. So I want to take a minute to talk about the use of eminent domain. On February 14th of 2017, the Murray City Council approved a motion to accept the potential use of eminent domain regarding property needed to build the new city council. If eminent domain is okay to use to acquire the potential 9 properties for this new city council building, why is it not appropriate to use eminent domain to acquire the 109 square feet of dirt that is not in use? Now's the time to use eminent domain to acquire this piece of land, as the city code states, to preserve and create a favorable environment for the citizens and visitors of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Jared, do we have any that we need to read?
Are there any more comments?
Are there any more comments?
I don't want to take up anybody's space.
This is still public.
We do have two to read that were sent in by email. The first is from Brenda Green. It says, Dear Planning and Zoning Commission, I strongly urge you to vote against the Trip Lane subdivision. I am not against the houses that are planned, just against the added traffic to the area. Trip Lane is the home of Riverview Junior High. Viewmont, Grant, Horizon, and part of Longview Elementary are the feeder schools that attend Riverview Junior High School. The school has an enrollment of 630 students. Most of the students walk or are dropped off by someone. There is only one bus that drops off children and picks them up. During cold months, most are driven to school. Trip Lane is not wide enough to handle the traffic problem that so many cars generate during drop-off and pickup. There have been 2 students hit in the last couple of years. The first one hit earned us a crosswalk halfway down the lane. There is no crossing guard, and the crosswalk is hidden between cars, so it is not a safe place to cross. The last student hit on 7th West earned us a sign that says you cannot make left-hand turns from 7:30 to 8:30 a.m. or 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. when school is in session. As more and more developments are approved, the street just gets busier. The area needs relief. The developments on Bullion, 800 West, Ivory Homes across from Smith's, Brad Reynolds north of Smith's, and the Lofts on 48th are just a few developments that have been green-lighted. Trip Lane needs some help to handle the traffic that it has to handle. I ask the Commission to come to see for yourself the drop-off and pickup and see how dangerous it is for the children. Only after the street is developed to handle this traffic should this subdivision go in. I understand that the children that live in the subdivision will most likely walk, but the adults will have to leave during the morning drop-off for work. The road in the subdivision will be wider than the road on Trip Lane. Since you can't turn left at the top of Trip Lane, they will go north on 800 West if they wish to go north, which creates a bottleneck where 800 West meets Bullion, which just so happens to be the smallest road in the area. You may ask yourself why we are now complaining about the traffic when it has been here for years. Most that lived on Trip Lane were under the assumption that the road would hook up with Willow Grove Lane. With that road would come some relief with the traffic problem by giving an additional way out of the area. However, it has been made clear that will never happen. In the past comments that were opposed to the road going through all agreed that Trip Lane is a mess and needs help. So we are pleading with the City of Murray to come up with a solution to the traffic problem on Trip Lane. We ask you to delay the building of the Trip Lane subdivision and any other plans that would make more traffic for Trip Lane until the problem can be solved by whatever means the city and school district can come up with. Thank you for your time, Brenda Green. The next addresses the City Council at the Planning Commission, and it says, this is from Brent Milne. As neighbors on the Trip Lane side of this discussion, we concur that the road between the 2 subdivisions should not go through. Traffic is already a nightmare here with the 2 schools. The cul-de-sac option is the best alternative. However, it needs to come from the Willow Grove Lane side and not Trip Lane. 12 more homes and at least 24 more cars is more than we can handle. Traffic on Trip Lane and 800 West with cars parked on both sides becomes a one-way street. Willow Grove Lane was left as a stub street to accommodate a cul-de-sac of 5 homes. But Goff was not successful in purchasing land from the Galvins. Bringing the cul-de-sac from that direction also takes care of a safety issue involving snowplows, garbage trucks, mailmen, Amazon, FedEx, and fire trucks who can use the cul-de-sac to turn around instead of back up or use the 2 driveways at the end of the present street. Church boundaries have changed recently where this option would make it possible for those homeowners to go to the church in their backyard instead of the other side of 700 West, where they could walk and not have to drive. I don't know if property values are an issue in any of this, but it will affect us all no matter what direction the cul-de-sac goes. We propose a delay of a decision on this matter for a month until NeighborWorks can see if this is an option. We're also sensitive to their concerns of the time and money that this has cost them out of their pocket and inflation. On the issue of eminent domain, we have, through research, found out that the size of the piece of property that would have to be seized using this option is 107 square feet. That is roughly 10 feet by 11 feet. It does not displace anyone from their home and does not affect any presently used property. If the purchase of this property cannot be made possible with the owner of the property, then I hope the City Council has the backbone to do the right thing for the community involved and exercise their legal right for the benefit of all. Brent Milne. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Last call. You can come up and make a comment again if you'd like.
My son wrote an email. I wondered if you received it, Parker Hills. I haven't. Yeah, I've seen
Yeah, we have Lucinda's.
Is that?
It's included. I don't have one from Doug Hill though. Or what'd you say, Doug Hill?
We did get multiple comments, but sure.
Okay. Ooh, to whom it may concern, I am writing concerning the NeighborWorks property at the end of Tripp Lane. In researching the situation, I have read through the information that has previously been provided to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which cites Murray City Code 16.16.180, and it's entitled Streets, Alleys, Cul-de-sacs, and Easements. Permanent cul-de-sac street and roundabout requirements. The turnaround at the end of a dead-end street designed and approved to be permanently closed to through traffic must meet the following requirements. Number one, no cul-de-sac street may exceed 1,000 feet in length. The turnabout at the end of the street must have a right-of-way radius of 50 feet measurement from the center of the turnaround to the property line. Number three, the length of the cul-de-sac street is measured from the center of the turnaround to the opening of the street as determined by the city engineer. Number four, an existing street which is retrofitted to become a cul-de-sac street must meet the requirements of this section. Section C, temporary cul-de-sac. If a subdivision street is intended to continue into adjacent property to comply with the requirements of subsection A of this section, a stub street with a temporary cul-de-sac may be established under the following conditions. One, if no residential lots use the temporary cul-de-sac street for access, the street may be of any length and need not have a turnabout at its end. Number two, if the stub street is in excess of 100 feet in length, one lot at the end of the street must be temporarily used for the construction of a turnaround as approved by the city engineer and the fire chief. Curbs, gutters, and sidewalks are required to be installed. It shall be the responsibility of the developer who constructs the continuation of the street to install the curb, gutter, sidewalks for the lot used for the turnaround. The stub street shall not be included in any subdivision plat without the express written approval of city engineer and planning and zoning submission. If the stub street is less than 100 feet in length, no temporary cul-de-sac is required. Then he just recaps what he got from what he read. This states that if a street is meant to be a permanently closed, there are some requirements, one of which is a turnaround area with a radius of 50 feet. Willow Grove Lane does not have any turnaround area. It ends at a fence. Willow Grove Lane currently measures approximately 180 feet, which per the code stated above would mean that there should be at least a temporary cul-de-sac instead of a stub. As the street stands now, it is not up to code. 16.16.210 entitled Procurement for Closure of Roadway. Number three, it is the intent of the city to have streets interconnect with other subdivisions and adjacent properties. This is something that is not only referred to in the city code, but is also clearly stated multiple times in Murray City Transportation Master Plan. 16.16.170, relation of new streets to adjoining streets, systems and access streets. Letter A, continuation of existing streets. The arrangement of streets in new subdivisions should provide for the continuation of existing streets from adjoining areas and should provide access to unsubsidized adjoining areas. The subdivider may be required to submit a plat providing streets which will continue into adjacent undeveloped properties and which describe a proposed entire street alignment which will provide the access to collector or other main streets as required in this chapter or to implement the city's transportation master plan. As stated above, there is the exception that existing streets should provide a continuation of the existing street and connect with adjoining areas. Per the cited city codes, it is apparent that Willow Grove Lane should connect to Tripp Lane because Willow Grove Lane is not built to code. The city wants streets to interconnect and join communities together, and Willow Grove Lane was built with the expectation of continuation. Lastly, I would like to address the current traffic and safety problems on Tripp Lane. He had a video for you to watch so that you could firsthand see it of cars. They're coming down Tripp Lane here. Someone's coming head on like this. They're turning to go down this 8th West, and the people are driving down 8th West, so they have to turn onto the sidewalk, and kids are walking everywhere. He wants you to watch the whole video. Apparently, you didn't get it. With Tripp Lane being able to connect to Willow Grove Lane, it would help the dispersion of the traffic faced in a much safer manner than in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you state who you were reading that for?
My son, Parker Hills.
Parker Hells.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, I'm going to close the public comment portion of this agenda item.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
So I agree with everything that's been said. I grew up in the area. I went to Viewmont, went to Riverview. Everything you said is true. And I'm new to this process, so I'm not exactly sure, how it made it this far, but I personally think this should go back to the city council. We should talk about it. Whether there's safety concerns with kids, I drop my son off to Viewmont every morning. I am that car that you're describing. And it is, I think about the same things. So I definitely hear you and will advocate where I can to, I don't know if we can do that. Can it go back to the city council? Or is it?
So the way this works, it's up to the, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bryant or Jared, it would be at the, because this has already been gone through the city council, if they were inclined to take it up again, they would have to get a petition from some other party, either the property owner, I would assume the Tripp Lane property owner, or it would have to come from the city council. Staff has taken the approach. We moved that process forward, and they made their decision based on that. So for this application specifically, no, this does not go to the city council. You guys are the land use authority, and in this respect, you are reviewing this subdivision application. So we can't, there's no way that the planning commission can say we can't approve this because we want the city council to address it, because they are a legislative body and they can decide what they decide to take up.
Well, and it's like anything else we vote on. There's been things I can name some things I don't like, but I voted in favor because legally they met all the requirements and there was no conditions that they weren't meeting or anything they were doing.
And that
to
is,
the community. I just didn't like the idea.
And that is 100% correct. This comes down to, this is an administrative action, meaning that it's just like conditional use permits. I think you guys probably talked about it in the training a little bit. I think maybe. No, that's open public meetings. But an administrative action means, do they meet the requirements in the subdivision code, and do they meet the requirements in the land use ordinance? And if that's the case, then you guys are legally required to approve the application.
I mean, I think all of us up here have either gone to the school, have a child that went to that school, have a child that is going to that school, or has a child that will be going to that school not too long.
Or drives down 7th West during
or has
school
soccer
time.
games or
Coached for years.
And the baseball field there, and all of us agree the traffic pattern is a huge issue. No one's opposed to that thought at all.
So it has to be taken up in a different way.
It has to be taken up in a different way.
I'm going to ask a hypothetical question. Let's say we approve this tonight, and let's say the applicant wants to change their mind and do a different plan. Could they still do that?
Yes.
So-
109 square feet or 107
They,
square
yes,
feet.
they could, if
Well-
for some reason, this is all hypothetical,
Yeah,
mind you.
Yeah.
hypothetically,
If they
just
decided
decide
that,
for
no,
whatever reason
this
they
is,
wanna
we don't want to
change
go
their
this
plan.
route. We do want the street to connect. They could come back with an application and we would say the exact same thing that, and I think there was a condition in the previous application that said that this is approved subject to
Eminent
obtaining that little piece of property. So they would have to,
So hypothetically, if
Okay.
people get together on Trip Lane and they make the petition and they take it to the city council, NeighborWorks could bring back the proposal that they already did make for it to connect to Trip
I
Lane.
mean, they
right?
like.
They already have that.
They already said
right?
they like that idea. They just can't do it.
Jared wants to.
That's a bad hypothetical.
No, it's not about hypothetical. It's just, I think it's worth pointing out, just as we're talking about that hypothetical, that this is not a case of this applicant, and I think this is what Zach was saying, and I just want to kind of put the edges on that. This is not a case of the subdivision applicant coming to us and saying, I don't want to buy that piece of property and make the road go through, or I just don't want to take the road through because I want to sell houses on cul-de-sacs because I think they're better. This is a case where the applicant is not able to perform that action. So the code citations about us wanting this, the city wanting roads to go through and connectivity, et cetera, that's all relevant, and we fought that battle and all true, planning, engineering, everybody all the way through, and we still agree with that. We are not able, as a body as this body or as staff, to make that happen. Neither is the applicant. There were attempts to purchase that property. It is not for sale. The only way to get it is through eminent domain. That question was asked and answered, and I just, there's nothing that would stop the applicant from asking the city council again. They would have to bring that kind of a petition, or the neighbors to make that kind of a petition, and then they're back to redesigning again. But without that assurance from the city council, there is no purpose in stalling them out on this preliminary subdivision approval.
So theoretically, though, we could address the eminent domain issue, which is the glitch in this whole thing, back to the city council. And theoretically, that the city council could take this up again.
But
And it
what's
might-
changed from the last time they voted?
They didn't have the guts to even vote on it.
But it
they
could be-
they brought a motion forward and would not even
Theoretically,
vote on
they
it.
could be a new
Frustrating 'cause
city council.
It's
Different people.
It's just,
I would say that the group is probably unwilling to move on that position.
I would not.
Probably hasn't changed the
I
same.
don't. You can make that clear. Here's what I would suggest. You can make it clear that you as a commission, and I think this is clear, you as a commission are definitely not opposed to that road going through. Is that fair to say? Yes. And neither is anybody on staff. That's been made clear. The city council can be made aware of that, and they can ask for it if they're willing to. And that answers the question. But I don't think it's appropriate to once again say, well, because last time it showed going through, and the approval of the commission was appropriate because you said, well, we do want this, but you can actually do this without this piece. So when you come back for final, show us that you've got this piece and we're good with this. If you don't have that piece, when you come back for final, it needs to be a cul-de-sac. This is essentially the extension of that conversation. I don't think it's fair to the applicant to say, why don't you wait again while we figure this out. Make it clear that that's the case, that you all feel that way, and that's good enough to say, hey, council, this is where we are. And if there's any change on the council, that will be made abundantly clear, and I'm sure that NeighborWorks would be willing to look at redesigning if they were able to count on that. But they'll need to be able to count on it for that to be appropriate.
And I think it's fair to say, too, that when we heard this previously, before it went to the city council, it was controversial. I mean, the room was roughly 50-50 split on whether or not that road should go through.
Yeah, the
And-
comments tonight make it seem like everyone wants the eminent
Right.
domain,
But the
and that
fif-
was not the case previously.
the 50% who was opposed to it didn't come tonight because they think the
Because they
discussion's
think
over.
they've got their way,
and
right?
it's yeah.
So just so I can summarize, us approving this doesn't stop them from doing something in the future.
That's exactly right. You approving the preliminary plat the way it's presented tonight, which is wholly appropriate given the land that they control, is not by any means an absolute ban on anything else happening in the future, because final still has to happen and there's time for people to talk about that. But again, I don't I think it's important to manage some expectations. Not a lot has changed since this was done.
Can I ask a question while you're up there, Jared?
Yeah.
They talked about the stub road of Willow Grove having to have a turnaround. Is that an old? I mean, has that always been there? And how does that? Or
Zach's more up on that.
So there's actually there's only so much that can happen there. Typically, so you could see a fine example of it on Christa Court. Is that what it is? On Christa Court, there is actually property. You know what? I'm just gonna do it this way. Yep, I'm just gonna go to the base map, not YouTube. Let's see. Just bear with me for just one moment. So, this was another location where the road is supposed to connect, but it doesn't. However, you can see right here that there is a circle located in there. Yeah, sorry. Located, and it won't highlight, I apologize, but it's right here at the edge of Christa Court. So, when I come here, let me do, because this has changed. As you can see, the property lines there go into that temporary cul-de-sac. And that was recorded on that deed, that this will be a temporary cul-de-sac until Christa Court connects. So we couldn't impose that on those property owners on Willow Grove Lane, and we couldn't put that in. It's I'm not a lawyer, so I'm trying not to sound lawyery, but it is.
Eyebrows.
Yeah, he just perks up. He knows I like to pretend like I'm a lawyer, but that would be an unreasonable request.
So sure.
Yeah, it would have that would have had to been done during the subdivision, and to ask this applicant to install a temporary cul-de-sac would be inappropriate.
Yeah, I understand that, and that's not. I guess that's not what I'm asking. But thank you for clarifying.
I'm
that.
sorry.
I'm just wondering, when Willow Grove that was approved, was it approved contingent upon? I mean, not contingent. That's wrong. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so don't. Was it approved because that was going to be a through street, and so they allowed it not to have the turnaround area because it was going to be a through street? Otherwise, wouldn't it have had to have the turnaround area when it was built?
It most likely would have been. But
and I understand we can't change that
Right.
because that's how it. I mean, I'm not saying
I would
we
have to
do or
research that
but-
further
Okay.
because I don't know the history of that subdivision.
And I guess what I'm just
Likely.
going to tell staff is, if that's the case, then we should make sure that in the future that there is no piece of property blocking a road going through when it was
Zach does
it was
allow that.
approved contingent upon there was going to be a through road. Is what I'm saying.
And that was the argument I made about it. It originally was intended to extend when we sent it to council last time.
Yeah.
I think.
Let
what-
me. I want to make sure that we're being clear, because I don't want the public to misrepresent, or we misrepresent to the public. In the last time, we didn't send anything to the council. The planning commission did not send anything to the council. You guys preliminarily approved a subdivision with a street going through, and then it was staff that went back and advocated for the street to be gone through. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that's clear, so that you guys don't get heat for not sending something to the council, because that is not your role, and not your ability, I guess.
A few more questions.
Sure.
There was a lot of code mentioned and issues with code. Does staff see any issue with us approving this and us not meeting code, or this not meeting code?
No. No.
Thank you. And then I'm not sure if you can address this, but I understand the traffic problems. I mean, I've had 3 kids in Riverview. I have one right now. I have driven him to school, so I feel your pain. And
You are
I-
also
I-
part of the problem.
I understand. But the question was asked, what can they do to help the traffic problem? I think as a commission, we're just looking at this one application and we're approving it or not. Do you have any recommendations for what they can do to help the traffic, or what? I mean, the question was asked. I'm just trying to give them an answer.
Hopefully, I don't get in trouble for this, but contact your city council people. Contact you can contact the
School
us,
district.
and we can move it on to traffic safety committees. You can also speak to the school district. I know I've hammered that before, and I know that was addressed earlier, that they have said they're not going to do anything. But those are really our 3 options. You can come to us, we'll bring it to traffic safety. You can bang on the doors of the city council people to fix the traffic issue there. Those are really what we're at.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments or discussions, motions?
I mean, I think I would just recommend, like Zach said, that is the next step, is that your representatives need to know on the city council. They were the ones that were part of this, of us being where we're at right now. And I feel as frustrated as you that we wanted that connectivity. We saw the advantages of that other plan. We did vote for it. And I do find it frustrating that the city council has used eminent domain in lots of other situations, for the downtown, in the MCCD. And I agree. I feel why you guys are frustrated, and I understand why our new commissioners that are on here are like, what's happening? Why are we doing a circle, and why we can't do a circle from Willow Grove Lane? Why we are doing a circle from Trip Lane? We are all here because of that one thing. But this is where we are at. And I think that NeighborWorks has done a really great job working with what they have been dealt. And I don't think that it's perfect for Trip Lane. I understand the concerns, but I think that for the work that NeighborWorks have done, I feel really comfortable, and I really like this cul-de-sac that they have brought forward, and the amount of work that has taken, because this is their second go around of trying to make this piece of property work. So I agree. Talk to your city council members, go to those meetings, tell them your concerns. They know about Trip Lane, but I think that they need to know how this greater impact is going to happen. Like, I mean, they know it came, they heard about it before, but don't stop telling them.
Is it too late for them to vote on it, or is it done?
So I'll just, so it's in the record, if you guys will allow the question.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the question was, is it too late for the council to vote on it? And I don't think so. I had heard somewhere from someone that there was an 18-month waiting period or something. I don't know where I heard that from, but that is... Jared wants to talk.
But if the citizens contact their councilman and their council person could bring it forward,
Well,
that
isn't
is the only.
Isn't that what it is? Because it has passed. It needs a new it.
Yeah, it needs a new it.
Zach's explanation of it beforehand was spot on. You didn't send anything to them because you can't.
Mm-hmm.
You approved something that was contingent upon them acting, and they chose not to act. And I do feel that's still valid. I don't know about the 18 months, but I think what you're saying is appropriate. They could still talk about it or something if they choose to do that. But I do want to point out one other thing. In spite of eminent domain having been mentioned a couple of times, the city council, one of the reasons they chose not to do it, I was there when they talked about it, they've almost never, and you can look at the records to correct me if I'm wrong, but the council here has almost never used eminent domain for any purpose. And that was one of their reasonings when they talked about it and weren't willing to take it up that night, was that they hadn't done it in the past for things. They didn't use it for the Fraternal Order of the Eagles to get that out of the way. They barely talked about using it to get the cell tower out of the way, to get City Hall moving forward. They threatened to use it a couple of times to move things forward, but they never pulled the trigger on that, to my understanding. And
So
if they ever have,
barely
it's,
used it on,
they talked about it. I don't know that they actually went forward with it.
because this seems
So-
like a barely used too.
Yeah, and if they did, it's one of the first times in a long time. That was one of the discussions, was that as a tradition, I don't know if it's tradition, but traditionally they have not used eminent domain.
Oh, I guess I had the impression that they used it for the road, some of the, to acquire property for the roads.
Property acquisition for roadways
different
is
than
different than
eminent
eminent. It's the same principle, and it's used. I understand that, but roadway acquisition for widening roads and things, it does get used.
But to make Hanauer connect, right? That is how they did that.
I don't know about Hanauer connecting, but Vine, there are times when the city does use, when the city engineering division and the public works department use roadway acquisition, and it's a kind of eminent domain. This felt different because it was taking property, and it was an accidental piece of property. We should never have this problem. It shouldn't be that
It was
case.
a protection
We tried
strip.
but it wasn't intentional. It got missed
It
in
was.
surveys, so no one knew it existed until it was purchased, and then it was in the way. So
I have to say, though, I'm a little bit shocked because it doesn't seem to me like the Utah way. Because in Utah, it seems like we believe in humanity to the extent that you can get on and off public transportation and there's no gates. You know, it's just.
Keep your government hands off my land.
Yes. So I thought the community would come together and consult with each other and come up with a plan, and as a community convince each other what needs to be done instead of intimate domain. Or, you know, instead of making you give up my land.
There are valid comments about right-of-way acquisition. That's true, and we looked at that as engineering and planning staff too. It's not the way the city council saw it when they reviewed it that night. It didn't feel the same to them. So.
I think what we can say here for sure is we don't have that power,
Right.
and we have to look at this application in front of us and decide whether we're going to approve it or not. And what happens with city council or doesn't, you know, that's not our domain. That's not what we
Correct.
can do. And so, you know, talk to your city council members, see what they can do. I'm guessing, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm guessing if they didn't vote on anything, there's probably no moratorium on voting for the first time, but I don't know that. So, yeah, I don't think that we need to continue to discuss eminent domain and what happened or didn't happen, because it doesn't matter exactly for this application we have in front of us.
But Mr. Chair, I
go ahead.
greatly appreciate what you just said. I 100% agree. But I also appreciate that we have this space to have this conversation occur a little bit so everyone can
No,
learn
I
more
agree,
about
and I'm
the
glad we
process.
had it. And yeah. Anything
I'll make a
else?
final comment about Trip Lane, and that is that Trip Lane's been a safety hazard for the last 30 years. So the school district, the city, we're talking about eminent domain here, but Trip Lane is
The problem.
maybe the bigger issue.
Yeah.
To include the corner of Trip Lane and 700, of which belongs to UDOT, right? 700?
It's a Murray Road.
Are you sure?
Yeah. 700 West is a local road.
Okay. In which case, Murray
Fix
can put a signal on 700 East as well. Anyway, my point is, while you're talking to your city council members, continue to mention that Trip Lane, not that it's just congested, it's a safety hazard. And between playing soccer, playing baseball on the end of Trip Lane, every morning, kids are getting dropped off. Every afternoon, I too have had 2 kids go to both of those schools. And I too gone into that parking lot more times than I want to admit, and turn around and then get back on 700. So Trip Lane needs to be repaired. The school district, being the school district, let me think, also belongs to Murray City School District. between the city and the school district, they can do something with Trip Lane now. They don't have to wait 3 years, my opinion. Well, I know what they say. They've been saying it for 20 years. So now is the time for them to fix Trip Lane. There's a little bit of property there on the south side. They can take school property and they can change parking to the other side of the building, make some additional parking there, in which case the only people who are actually parking there are people who work at the school. We as residents who are dropping off our kids there, we don't necessarily park there unless there's some emergency, a sick child, etc. So, my point, fix Trip Lane.
And a reminder, the school board is also an elected body,
Yeah.
so.
Go to
talk
those meetings.
them.
Bring it
Go
up
to
with
them,
your,
go to those
your
meetings.
representative, for sure.
I just want to add to Trip Lane. Trip Lane is the problem, but it's also, I'm blanking the other road that goes in front of Umont,
Anderson or Buoyant? No.
in front of the Milnes.
800 West?
800 West.
West, thank you. That's also a problem. I mean, it needs to be addressed at the same time as Trip Lane, I think.
And the schools aren't getting less populated.
And the right only turn sign doesn't make people turn right. There's still people turning left every day. Yep. Okay, any other discussions or a motion?
I'll move forward. Make a motion, the planning commission grant preliminary subdivision approval of Trip Lane subdivision on the property addressed 871 West Trip Lane, subject to conditions 1 through 12.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Ney. Do I have a second?
I will second it.
Second from Commissioner Hacker. Zach?
All right. Commissioner Ney.
Yes.
Commissioner Hacker.
Yes.
Commissioner Richards.
No.
Commissioner Milkevich.
Yes.
Commissioner Patterson.
Yes.
And Chair Pearson.
Yes. Okay. Well, congratulations on your approval. Thanks to the public for coming for that agenda item.
Neighborhood Works, you're doing the right thing. You are.
Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 7.
Thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So, agenda item number 7 is a text amendment to Chapter 17.78, which is our accessory dwelling unit ordinance. This is brought forward by Peggy Aime. Okay, Aime. There we go. Good. So this is a request to modify the area for a detached accessory dwelling unit. So there are 2 types of ADUs. We kind of talked about that in 2021, so I'll just give a little brief history on that. So on the left, there we go, is an attached ADU, which means it's actually incorporated into the house in some way, either as a expansion of the home or in the basement or on the second floor, whatever. It's attached in some way. A detached ADU is exactly what it means. It's not in any way physically touching the existing dwelling. So the request is for reducing the required size for an ADU. So the current requirement is a 12,000 square foot lot. The accessory dwelling could not be more than 1,000 square feet or 40% of the main dwelling, whichever is less. Cannot have more than 2 bedrooms, and then it requires 2 additional off-street parking spaces. The proposal in front of us tonight is to just remove 2,000 square feet off of that. So to go from a 12,000 square foot lot to a 10,000 square foot lot. So this does kind of play into the moderate income housing element of the general plan that we talked about. This is not the only change that we as staff want to make to the detached ADU ordinance. This was just an application that came forward before we were prepared to make wider changes. There are additional research that I need to conduct early next year to figure out what's really going to fit for Murray. And then we will be bringing those back later, sometime in 2023. So at this point, it is just reducing that area standard. It will still require everything else that a detached ADU is required to obtain at this point. Like I said, it does help modern income housing by lowering that. I was making these slides today. If I had realized that I wanted this earlier, I would have tried to make a map kind of showing how many properties this would affect, because I believe it is a very significant amount. There are leaps and bounds more properties that are in the 10,000 square foot range than there are in the 12,000.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What percentage of those are west side versus east side?
Ooh, don't go there.
I don't know. I didn't have time.
Do we have a rough estimate?
No, not at all.
Is it
guesstimate?
fair to say, though, that the majority of the R110 lots are going to be on the east side and not on the west side?
The R110 zoning is largely on the east side, yes. But that doesn't necessarily mean that. For example, the Trip Lane subdivision that we just went through, at the bottom of that cul-de-sac was an 11,000 square foot lot.
But in an R18 zone.
In an R16 zone.
Oh, okay.
But
And-
they would be allowed.
And it
same
would be
with
allowed to have a
10,000, they could
detached
build a
ADU.
detached.
Yes. And so a lot in cul-de-sacs
Yeah.
have really large lots in the
And that could
popsicle.
be all over the city.
Yeah,
right? Like,
and
it's
they
not
will.
just-
Yeah, they are all over the city. I had a lady call just yesterday asking if she could do a detached ADU, and she had 10,400 square feet. I was like, I have to tell you no right now, but come January, I hope I can tell you yes. So give me a call in January, because I knew this was coming forward. So I think it could impact significantly citywide. But yes, so anyway, so overall, our recommendation is for approval. And then this was weird because I didn't have I changed the slide on this one. So the motion is down here instead of up here. So we are recommending that you forward a recommendation of approval to the city council. Questions, comments?
My only comment is I think it
Soapbox.
should go 6,000 square feet.
And we will definitely be looking into that as we move forward with additional changes.
I think it's the only way we're actually going to make a positive impact on moderate income housing. I
Sure.
think it's the only way it's going to happen.
That was a very tiny soapbox.
You only told me the size of your
told
phone.
him.
Yeah, I did.
That was the extent of the preaching.
That's it, I'm done.
Ready to make a motion?
So I just have one question, I guess. So
Sure.
all the R110 lots, in theory, are 10,000 square feet, and they would most, and so most of them would qualify for an ADU now.
Would qualify for the lot requirement.
Yeah.
There are still
Sure,
setback
there's a requirement.
there are setback
Sure.
requirements
To
that
make it fit,
also
Yeah.
very strictly prohibit.
Sure. So
A
assuming they can meet
detached
all those
ADUs.
other ones, we're looking at adding potentially most.
Pretty
of the
much from
R110s
13th East. eastward.
for the square footage requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions?
In future considerations, are we considering things like rear yard setbacks similar to side yard setbacks?
For ADUs?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking at a lot of by looking I mean they're floating in my head.
And when might we hear those, Zach?
Aggressively, I want this, and Jared doesn't even know this yet. Aggressively, I want this adopted by mid-year. I'm required to look at it. I'm required to have,
In 2023.
by the end of 2023. Yeah.
He's
Due
just
to the
over-
And that I said aggressively.
Some housing.
That's aggressively. I also have a station area plan that I have to do next year too. So by the end of 2023.
And so, like, all the time when I speak, I might not truly be representing myself and what I'm about to say. But when you look at accessory dwelling units, when we look at setbacks to make it more feasible, then I'm assuming we'll also look at, these smaller properties like mine might have more parking issues. So we'd be looking at changing parking requirements as well, or height requirements, or all
Maybe
of that.
we'll look at it.
Well, and I say that I know there's some people who will be upset by it and the increased density.
Here's what I think we, because of our last meeting, I think we better stick to things related to the topic at hand.
Well, and I think that parking requirement, if you're talking about parking requirements regarding ADUs, I don't think, and I feel pretty safe to say that I will not go above that 2 for detached accessory dwelling units.
But you'll stay with the 2. That's why I'm.
I don't know,
Some
but that's
properties
something.
that small won't be able to increase the parking by 2.
But for this change to make it 10,000, there probably is adequate parking to meet these
they would have to meet
requirements,
that,
right? If
yep.
we're talking smaller, we really would have to take a lot of considerations in if we really are considering 6,000 square foot. But just for this change, it probably is very reasonable that they could meet all of these other parking requirements.
We don't see any
4
change there.
off-street parking spaces.
Yeah, a total of
seems
4
reasonable
off
for
street.
10,000 square foot.
Yep.
Any other comments or motion?
You got to do some
Oh.
comment.
Oh, yeah, sorry. See, that's,
Public comment.
we will do a public comment period right now, so we're going to open the public comment period. And do I usually do the applicant first or after? I've opened it now. We're going to have the applicant come forward first. So if we could have the applicant come forward.
Normally these are staff.
Everybody left, so I just forgot about it. Please come forward. Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Thank you for meeting with me. My name is Peggy Imai. I'm currently residing at 443 East Vine Street.
Thank you, Peggy. Do you have any additional things you want to mention or tell the commission?
Not really. Actually, I'm just short of the 12,000 square feet that we needed. So I actually want to take it down to 11, and it was recommended that I make it 10, so that's what I did.
Okay, thank you.
One of the reasons I want to put an ADU on there and have to make this request is because there are power lines across the property that I think need to be addressed. And so the architect recommended that we see if we could put it a detached unit, which is much nicer for the design of the home. But he has actually designed it so that it could be attached to the home, but it really doesn't look as nice as if we had a detached unit.
Thank you. Thanks, Peggy. Does anybody have any questions for Peggy? Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Now we're going to open up the public comment. So if you are here and would like to make a comment, please come to the podium and state your name and address. Looks like we have nobody here. Do we get any emails? Okay, I'm going to close the public comment portion. And now we can have additional discussion or a motion if we would like.
I would like to make a motion that we move to forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for the request to amend the text of Chapter 17.78.050J, detached accessory dwelling units, to state the minimum lot size required for construction of a detached ADU in all single-family residential zones shall be 10,000 square feet.
Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Patterson. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second from Commissioner Richards. Zach?
Sorry, give me 1 second. I was in my own head. Nope, it's fine. Commissioner Richards.
Yes.
Commissioner Patterson.
Yes.
Commissioner Milkevich.
Yes.
Commissioner Ney.
Yes.
Commissioner Hacker.
Yes.
And Chair Pearson.
Yes. Okay. That concludes our agenda items except other business.
Oh, is that legal?
Other business?
Controversial business.
Yeah, not controversial.
Dang it.
I do have two tiny little things. I believe that we are going to cancel the December 1st meeting.
Oh, good. I'm not going to be here.
You're not going to be there? Okay. So I'm hoping that you all can make the 15th of December, because we will have a couple applications on that one. So if you guys have anything you need from us, let us know. Jared has, oh, yes, Jared has a thing or two.
Just real quickly, we did successfully hire Seth Rios' replacement. His name is Mustafa Al-Janabi. He'll be starting on December 5th. So you'll probably meet him at that December 15th meeting or 16th meeting. I forget the date.
Where does he come from?
He's right here. He lives, I think it's actually Midvale. I think we deliver his mail, so his address says Murray, but it's actually Midvale. He actually works for the Parks Department right now, but he's got his urban ecology degree and is ready to start trying to be a planner. So he's going to start with on December 5th. We've also just successfully hired an economic development specialist named Abigail. She'll be starting on the whatever the first Monday is after Thanksgiving, I forget. But she'll be starting as well. So we're gonna start building some programs and looking at ways to expand our business base and diversify and bring more people in. So if you have ideas,
Tell me his name again.
I'm sorry.
Mustafa.
Mustafa's name is Mustafa Al-Janabi. Janabi.
So is that, I know when Tim was here, he was doing lots of those things. Is that basically doing just replacing that kind of what he was doing?
Yeah, I think with a person dedicated to it,
Yeah.
without the duties that Tim had, we're going to be able to go further than we
Yeah.
had before. And that's kind of the thinking, is that we'll expand those programs that we haven't had before, and do as much as we can.
Just because I'm interested, I mean, you told us the name and a little bit of background of the new city planner. How about the new economic development specialist? What's her name? Where's she from?
Abigail Jacobson. So the name is not as exotic, just for the record. She is from Harriman
Herman.
and she's been working with the governor's office.
Go-Ed?
now in client services. Yep. Not Go-Ed, with client services. But her background is real good for what we're trying to do, events and things like that. So,
Very cool.
yep, there you go. Anyway, that's all I had. So.
Okay. Anything we need to talk about, or motion to adjourn?
Can I make the motion to adjourn at 8:37 p.m.?
Motion to adjourn, second?
Second.
We're adjourned. Thanks.
Thank you.